quite a few scholars, Western scholars, have studied thoroughly the verses of the Rig Veda, and they have interpreted that they had handmade pottery. Rao was the pioneer in this work, and he has been supported by Kuzmina and Mallory, Grantovsky, etc. And you will find the summary in my book of the year 2014. This is the handmade fire-baked pottery. This found from Mehergarh period 2A. This is probably the earliest pottery the Hindus or Vedic people of the Rig Veda were able to make. But they broke very easily because they were just made by hand, then united by hand and given a shape.
Namaste everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to Sangam Talks. So we are back again with an interesting topic. We have Dr. Premendraji present with us today, and he's going to speak on the Mehergarh period 1 and 2 archaeology and the Rig Veda. So Dr. Premendra Priyadarshiji is a physician with keen interest in Indian history. His research spans wide right from history of science in India to dating of Vedas. His book, In Quest of the Dates of the Vedas, is a breakthrough in the dating of Vedas. And today, he's going to speak, as I mentioned, on Mehergarh period 1 and 2 archaeology and the Rig Veda. Several attempts have been made to align the Vedic period with Harappa civilization. However, Harappa civilization is much advanced than the Rig Veda and matches best with the descriptions in the Yajurveda. The Rig Veda is a pre-Harappan and it matches in details with the Mehergarh period 1 and 2, that is 8500 to 6000 BCE. On these bases, Rig Veda cannot be later than 6000 BCE. So without any further ado, I would request Dr. Priyadarshiji to start sharing his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaskar, and many thanks for giving me another opportunity to be with you and tell something about my research. What I did, I tried to match the description from Indian archaeology over the last 10,000 years. And then I went through each of the Vedas separately and tried to match the sections with the archaeological findings. And I found that the early Mehergarh was the description. The archaeology of the early Mehergarh is the thing which has been mentioned in the Rig Veda. So first thing which I am going to introduce to you is archaeobotanical evidence and palynology. Palynology is the science of the study of pollens found from soil. There were some works already done by Constantini. Constantini was a member of the excavation team of the Mehergarh. So he made valuable observations, which were unfortunately not taken note of by many of the authors. So let me start from Bhargava, who is pre-Constantini. Bhargava in 1964 claimed that the Rig and other Vedas mention the presence of such trees in the northwest India, which grow today only in the temperate regions of Europe, Siberia, and the Himalayas. This prompted many authors to suggest that the Vedas, particularly the Rig Veda, was composed somewhere to the north of India. Witzel claimed that there was a folk retention in the memory of those plants by the Vedic people, and even after coming to India, they have mentioned those plants in their composition of the Vedas. However, Priyadarshi 2014 claimed that Rig Veda was composed at a time in the Indus Saraswati region when this region was colder, and those animals and plants which are actually inhabitants of colder climates today were actually living in that region. And by this method, he fixed this time. He means me. He fixed this time at 8,000 to 6,000 BCE. So let us come to a famous doctrine of wisdom, what he wrote. Finally, it must be considered that generally the Indo-European plants and animals are those of the temperate climate and include the otter, beaver, birch, willow, elm, ash, oak, etc., juniper, poplar, maple, adler, hazelnut, etc. He gives a big list. Some of them are found in South Asia, but most of them are not found in India, and their designations have either been adapted or they have simply not been used any longer. Priyadarshi replied to Vigil's such claims about those plants and animals, and we can just discuss a few. We take the example of willow, which Vigil has mentioned as an evidence. Vigil claimed that Vetasa, the Sanskrit word for willow, which is a cognate word, same origin word, is found in the Vedas, but willow is not found in India. So probably when they came to India, they retained this word and applied this to reed plants and bait, what is Calamus rotang, bait plant. Actually, bait word is also derived from vetra in Sanskrit, which also means willow tree. So this is the current situation. And Priyadarshi 2014 book, citing Constantine's finding of willow pollens from Mehergarh ancient soils, completely destroyed Vigil's argument. So what Lorenzo Constantini had written, he had listed pollens of plants found from different layers of soils from Mehergarh. And these soils of different layers were also radiocarbon dated. So what were the results of Constantini, which have been cited by Jarij also? He found that since the beginning of Holocene up to the 4th millennium BCE, that is maximum up to 3000 BCE, only the Vetas or willow pollens have been found from those soil layers. After that, this plant becomes extinct from the region. Now it has been mentioned as present in the Rig Veda as well as the Yajur Veda. The Vedic description of the tree, I read the descriptions myself and I found that it matches the willow tree exactly, and it doesn't match the Calamus rotang or any reed tree. So therefore, these trees which Rig Veda mentions were definitely willow trees, and their pollens are also present in Indian soil and Mehergarh soil before 3000 BCE. So definitely Rig Veda and Yajur Veda had been composed before 3000 BCE when the willow trees had existed in that region of India. So 3000, so now we can fix at least one thing, that these two Vedas were composed before 3000 BCE, not after. This is a willow tree, which is no more growing in Indian plains. And when I lived in Lincoln City, there were a large number of willow trees, and they are associated with divinity. So I always went there and sat under them. Rig Veda mentions Vetasa as the golden willow, Hiranyamayo Vetaso. I have misspelled. It is claimed that they are divine and provide liberating spiritual benefit to those who see these trees. It is written in the Atharvaveda. Constantini's pollen samples pertained to a radiocarbon dated period between 8,000 and 5,500 BCE and included all the trees expected by Witzel to be present in Indo-European homeland in a dry, colder environment. So this is a great coincidence. Now, this is the paragraph from Constantini's article in which he mentions that he found Abies, Piscia, Suga, Pinus, Juniperus, Quercus, Thalia, Corylus, all these plants, most of them Populus, Salix, Fraxinus, they're no more present in India, but they were found from that layer of soil. And they have been, most of them have been mentioned in the Rig Veda also. So this cannot happen until the Rig Vedic people were present in that area during that period. This is my argument. One unfortunate thing which I had a communication with Constantini, we are still in touch, he's quite old, and he sadly said that 90% of his work on Mehergarh in the Saraswati was never published. So that is quite sad. Now, these facts prompted Priyadarshi to work out in detail the climate change in Northwest India since 10,000 BC. There must have been some severe, serious climate changes which completely changed the spectrum of plants and animals in the area again and again. So now we can take another example, Kharjura or Khajur. From the Constantini's report, we find that the oldest archaeological record of dates or Khajur comes from about 5,500 BCE, Mehergarh period 3, which is after our date for Rig Veda. My date of Rig Veda ends at 6,000 BC. Now, a seed of Kharjur has been found from 5,500 BC. And Kharjur has been mentioned in the Yajur Veda, the Taittiriya Samhita, but it is absent from Rig Veda for 500 years. So this fact can be used to date very accurately the onset of Yajur Veda period and the end of the Rig Veda period. Taittiriya Samhita is also called Black Yajur Veda. Now, another evidence from plant. I have also done on a large number of plants and animals, hundreds, but today I will present only a few couple of them. So banana, such a delicious thing today and used as prasad in all the pujas, it is absent from Rig Veda and Yajur Veda. Now, D.K. Fuller and others have done research and they have found that banana was not present in Northwest India up to about 2000 or 2200 BCE. It reached after that. Okay, how it happened? So this is the home of banana, wild banana plants, and it was present in eastern India and South India in its wild form, and people were eating it also in Sri Lanka about 10,000 BC. Evidence is that banana was eaten by them. But it took time because of the difference in climate. It cannot grow everywhere, and slowly it reached Indus Valley after the Rig Veda and Yajur Veda had been composed. So if Rig Veda is composed at about 1500 BCE, then banana should be there. In that, not only banana, tiller, many things are absent from Rig Veda. Mango is another such thing. It was growing in East and North East India and Myanmar, but it reached Indus Valley region quite late. And Kashyap and Weber have worked on it. And mango has not been mentioned in the Rig Veda or in Yajur Veda. I have not checked the Athar Veda for mango particularly. So now come to a comparative study. So we have dealt with some fruits, some pollens, some trees. Now a comparative table of some characteristic features, minus and plus, absent and present. So wheel made for pottery was absent in Rig Veda and Mehergarh, period 1 and 2, but it was present in Yajur Veda. Yajur Veda mentions it, and Rakhi Gadi and Harappa. Burnt bricks absent in Rig Veda and Mehergarh 1 and 2, but present in Yajur Veda and Rakhi Gadi Harappa. Wheat absent in Rig Veda and Mehergarh 1 and 2, but present in Yajur Veda and Rakhi Gadi Harappa. In the same way, rice, vrihi, it has not been mentioned in Rig Veda, and it has not been found from the archaeological remains of Mehergarh 1 and 2, but it has been mentioned in Yajur Veda, and also Rakhi Gadi and Harappa civilization show the evidence of cultivation of rice as a wide level, about 1/3. Cotton. Now, cotton is absent in Rig Veda. It hasn't been mentioned. People used wool for a dress material. In Mehergarh also, we find wool as dress material. However, a thread of cotton has been found there, which I will describe later. Only one thread of cotton. In Yajur Veda, we get mention of cotton, and in Rakhi Gadi and Harappa civilization, cotton is the principal dress material. Now come to sesamum or til, which is so important in Hindu rituals, is completely absent from Rig Veda. And it is also not found in Mehergarh. It grew in South India in the wild form, and it is during the Bronze Age or early, maybe Copper Age, that it was brought to North India. So we find it in Yajur Veda as well as we find it in Harappa civilization. Other things are wet fauna, the animals which are very much which are found in dense forests, like tiger, wet forests, beaver, ajgar, python. So these haven't been mentioned in Rig Veda and Mehergarh, but in Mehergarh we don't find their bones. But in Yajur Veda, definitely they have been mentioned, and they have been detected from Harappa civilization excavations. One important thing is amulet or pratisara. Pratisara is some type of, I don't know, mukhota type, some tabiz or something. But this is this has not been mentioned in the Rig Veda. It is mentioned in the Yajur Veda, and no pratisar has been found, no amulet has been found from Mehergarh 1 and 2, whereas in Harappa there is plenty and plenty of amulets have been found. So the descriptions which we get in Yajur Veda are exactly present in either Rakhigarhi or Harappa. They were same civilization. Um, writing is something which is not mentioned in Rig Veda. A large number of European scholars have examined Rig Veda thoroughly, and they felt that there is no evidence of writing, but people were just remembering the verses composed. And in Mehergarh also, we have not found on any stone or anything any evidence of writing. But we find the mention of writing in Yajur Veda, and we also find letters written on the seals of Harappa. So writing is present in Yajur Veda, and it is also present in Harappa. So these are not just coincidence, because coincidence can happen once or twice. It cannot happen 100 times. Now coming to copper. Copper has been mentioned in Rig Veda, and in late period 2, we get copper at Mehergarh. I will show Molherat's work. And in Yajur Veda, copper is there. In Harappa, obviously, it is there. Bronze is there in Harappa, Bronze Age. Iron is absent from Rig Veda, and it is also absent from Mehergarh. But in Yajur Veda, as iron has been mentioned as a shamak or black metal or Krishna ayas, and it has been found in a large number of sites from Harappa civilization dating back up to almost 3000 BC. And now coming to next point, pottery and bricks. Now, in Mehergarh period 1, there is no pottery. But in Mehergarh period 2, we get handmade pottery. How they look, I will show you a photo after in the next slide. Pottery is absent, generally absent in Rig Veda, but a large and wheel-thrown pottery is particularly absent. But quite a few scholars, Western scholars, have studied thoroughly the verses of the Rig Veda, and they have interpreted that they had handmade pottery. Rao was the pioneer in this work, and he has been supported by Kuzmina and Mallory, Grantovsky, etc. And you will find the summary in my book of the year 2014. This is the handmade fire-baked pottery. This found from Mehergarh period 2A. This is probably the earliest pottery the Hindus or Vedic people of the Rig Veda were able to make. But they broke very easily because they were just made by hand, then united by hand and given a shape. Pottery. The Rig Veda and Avesta too do not mention the potter's wheel, and the pottery was in all probability handmade, made by hand during the early Vedic period. This finding could indicate the time of a split between the Indo-Aryans of India and the Avestan speaking people who went to live in Khurasan. Khurasan is the region of Iran just adjacent or just west of Afghanistan border. Avesta was composed in Khurasan. Okay, so this is the map of Khurasan where these people, the Iranian branch of Indo-European speakers, went and settled. And this time was before the invention of potter's wheel. William Rao has compiled the Vedic references to pottery from the oldest strands of the Black Yajurveda and found that although the potter's wheel was known, it was handmade pottery that was prescribed for ritual sphere. This suggests to him that the more primitive technique persisted in the ritual sphere, while in secular life, more advanced methods of potting had already been adopted. This is true. In the ritual fields, we generally tend to retain some ancient things. Like in pujas also, the more orthodox or traditional people, they won't buy sweets from market or cakes, etc., but they would rather cook themselves to offer things to God in a very primitive way. And their fruits and things are also not modern. They are quite ancient type of things which they offer. They won't offer papaya or kiwi, but they would offer banana and mango, which is Indian in origin. So this was happening in the Yajurveda period, that the people were using for commercial and domestic purposes the ghada and pots made from the potter's wheel, but they were not using these things, these potteries for ritual purposes. They were using the handmade pottery still, which was found in which was made and used during the Rig Vedic period, later part of the Rig Veda. So this is the thing which now what they have written, some scholars. Of relevance to this line of argument is a verse from Taittiriya Samhita stating that what is turned on the wheel is asuric and what is made without the wheel is godly. We also do these things. When the fan was new to India, the older people said that its air is very harmful for health because it comes through electricity. The similar thought was there. Now, next statement is, should this assumption be correct, we can pin down the transition from handmade to wheel-thrown pottery. Yes, very important point. If this assumption that change from handmade to potter's wheel-made pottery came at the earliest strands of the Yajurveda, then we can date it from archaeology. Unfortunately, when these scholars like Rao was writing and doing his work, Mehergarh had not been invented. It had not been excavated. So he could not do this. But if we follow his doctrine, then we can say that this transition between Rig Veda and Yajurveda took place about 5,500 BC from the Rao's criteria cited in Brand. These are the important authors who have worked a lot on this, and they are very helpful. They minimize our labor, and they have done hard work, so we should consult them. Now I am coming to another civilizational item, which is baked bricks, ishtak. In Sanskrit, it is ishtaka. And in Hindi, it becomes eat or it. So Eta, some people also say Eta. So Ishtak, baked bricks. Word baked bricks are absent in Mehergarh 1 and 2 both. And they are absent, the word Ishtak word is absent from Rig Veda completely. This point was made out first by Kazanas, and I was inspired by him. And then I did further research on all such items and expanded the number of items. Vrihi, that is rice, and Ishtak, Kazanas told me when he met me that these were absent from Rig Veda. And he has also written in his book. So Ishtak appears in Yajur Veda, and a large chapter has been devoted to bricks, in praise of the bricks, how the bricks are used, how they are important. They are just like God because they protect us. And bricks have been used extensively in Harappa civilization to protect from rains and thieves. Its cognate words are in Germanic and Balto-Slavic branches with the meaning of a stove, hearth, chimney, etc. But they did not have burnt bricks till quite late because they migrated from India. They retained the word, used it to the stove, but at such a great distance, their artists, people, trained people who could make bricks had not gone, they migrated with them, and therefore they could not make bricks there so quickly. Burnt bricks appear in Harappa and Rakhigarhi, and this phase is after Mehergarh period 1 and 2. Now, burnt bricks appear in Yajur Veda after Rig Veda period. We have already discussed it. So, see what John Marshall said. John Marshall had rightly thought that Harappa was much wetter period than Mehergarh 1 and 2. He argued that burnt brick houses were in Harappa as the result of the necessity to protect from heavy rains. A massive system of burnt brick-lined drains too was required due to the heavy rainfall in the region at that time. Yes, the Harappan drainage system are massive. It is a much more deep and system of nalas, brick-lined nalas, than we find in Patna or Munger or some district towns in North India these days. So now let us examine Yajurved, whether they also support it. Yajurved too mentions that the burnt bricks protect the humans from rains and floods. Taittiriya Samhita and Vajasneyi Samhita, both volumes of the Yajurveda, these are the two volumes of the Yajurveda, they report extensive use of burnt bricks for lining wastewater drains, embankments of the rivers, the wells, ponds, and tanks. And also the use of burnt bricks in the construction of the human dwellings, which were intended, these bricks were intended for protection and prosperity. Dwellings made with burnt bricks protected from the rains and had defense purposes too, as they helped endure the battle for cattle. The Taittiriya Samhita explicitly mentions the word rain-winning bricks. I have given the references, the people who like to consult them. TS means Taittiriya Samhita. Now, early Mehergarh mud bricks migrated out to, yes, in Mehergarh, there was no burnt bricks, but there were mud bricks. Muds were large lumps of muds, were given rectangular shapes, very large, and they were dried and then put one over other to make mud walls. So this type of construction of houses migrated, and Jarij mentions it. But quadrangular houses built with about 60 centimeter long narrow bricks with a herringbone pattern of impressions of thumbs to provide a keying for the mud mortar have been uncovered at several aceramic Neolithic sites in Zagros, such as Ganjdare, Ali Kosh, Tehran, etc., regions of Iran, where, like at Mehergarh, traces of red paint have also been noticed on the walls. Circular fire pits filled with burnt pebbles are also associated to all these early settlements. The lithic industries also show evident parallels. So, what Jared suggests that those people who migrated to Iran in different places, they just retained the mud house construction technology, which was present in Mehergarh. And in our previous uh, lecture, I had discussed how people from Mehergarh migrated to Iran. And these are cultural features which they took away from India to those places. One important point noted by Jarij was circular fire pits filled with burnt pebbles were used as tandoors for cooking bread, etc. at the time when there were no tawa or cooking pans, etc. Yes, pottery was not there. So how did they cook? So what they did, burnt pebbles, small, छोटे छोटे ढेले कह सकते हैं आप उसको, pebbles made of clay were burnt, and when they became red, they were filled in the hearth, top layer of the hearth, and then they could put the dough, atta, on that to make bread or cakes, things like that. Now we come to metal and metallurgy, metals and metallurgy, comparative study of all those things. I already mentioned the presence of copper in Rigveda as well as Mehergarh, and the historians and Indian archaeologists do not take note of this finding. It is an article published by Maul Herat. He has been cited by Upinder Singh also, and many, a few, but not all. I would like to refer to him. He found first evidence of cotton at Neolithic Mehergarh, Pakistan, and this was a mineralized cotton fiber from a copper bead. So there was some lady who was after death put in the grave with must have been very rich person, because those days copper was much more expensive than diamond today. So she was wearing a mala, matar mala, something like a beads, and the beads were made of copper, and then there was a hole through it, and a cotton thread they were held through with a mm, uh, this copper thread, which was quite converted into a good thread, strong thread. This is the earliest evidence of cotton, of course, and copper also from Mehergarh period, Neolithic period 2, I would say. Now, Rigved mentions only copper, and in Mehergarh also we find only copper, no other metal. And only evidence, this article by Maul Herat. Later more things can come. Now we come to Harappa and Yajurved comparison. They had same metals and alloys: iron, copper, lead, tin, gold, bronze. And these all are found in Harappa civilization too. Regarding the presence of iron in Harappa culture, archaeologists have tended to deny it. However, Fossil Tiwari, Rakesh Tiwari, etc., have noted iron in Harappa since about 3000 or a bit later than this date. Iron in Indus Valley civilization. B.B. Lal, who equated the Rig Veda with Harappa civilization, thought that there was no iron in Indus Valley civilization. Therefore, it could be Rig Vedic civilization. However, he had ignored the writings of archaeologists like Possehl, who had documented iron in Harappa civilization since almost about 3000 or 2700 BC. There is no mention. This iron was mentioned as black metal or shama when it was invented first to distinguish it from copper, because copper was also called loha, loh, ayas, etc. The same words were used for iron also, but black word was prefixed to it. And iron appears in Yajur Veda. I have mentioned the verse. The same verse of the Yajur Veda also mentions lead, tin, gold, bronze, and copper. And these all things are found in Harappa civilization. Now, why we don't get too many irons? Because iron was very expensive at that time. It was much more expensive than gold. There was an article present in Indian Archaeological Society's International Conference in which a lady paper presenter had said that it was about 100 times more expensive than gold, but that could be her conjecture. But definitely it was very expensive, so people tried to recycle it like we today recycle gold and silver. If our gold ornament breaks, we don't throw it away, we sell it to the goldsmith and he recycles it. Same thing was happening to iron. And therefore, we don't get any iron from the Harappa civilization. Secondly, if anything got by mistake thrown up in land and got buried, it is highly perishable in warm, humid climate of the early Bronze Age. Its artifacts from the wet mid-Holocene cannot be expected to have survived till today. And keeping these facts in mind, even if we are able to get 5, 6, or 10 iron pieces from those periods, it has to be considered very significant. So we are able to get some early pieces of iron from the Bronze Age of Indus Valley civilization, and particularly to be mentioned are Mundi Gak, Said Kala Tepe, Deh Morasi, Gundai, Ahar, Chanhudaro, and Lothal. They have been mentioned by Possehl. And they date back to 3rd millennium calibrated BC after calibration. Agrawal and Agrawal have given their uncalibrated dates. Then on the bank of Kala River near Takshila, some early Bronze Age graves bear iron objects like finger rings and paste bracelet fragments, although the other features of the grave are those of Kot Diji graves. So if we are able to find a finger ring from a grave, the technology must have started 300-400 years earlier, because from lab to shop, time gap was much longer those days, laboratory to shop. So we have to consider it. And these dates, authors have dated about 2500 to 2600, 2700, like that. Edwin Brandt wrote, in Mundi Gak, 5 iron items dated between 2600 and 2100 BCE were found, including a copper bronze bell, ghanti, with an iron clapper, 2 iron buttons on a copper bronze rod, an iron button on copper bronze mirror, and 2 indistinct lumps of carbonated irons. So some of them seem to be items of everyday use. So we have seen that metallurgically, Yajurved completely covers the Harappa civilization, whereas Rigved is definitely before this because it mentions copper only and nothing else. Now we can make such comparisons of food grains. What were the food grains those days? While Rig Veda mentions only barley or yava, other food grains appear in Yajur and Athar Vedas. Food grains mentioned in Black Yajur Veda or Taittiriya Samhita, which I have thoroughly studied, include first is Kuyava. I don't know what this Kuyava was, but it must be some bad barley or bad grain. Then Yajurveda, Black Yajurveda, Taittiriya Samhita mentions Yava Godhum, any barley and wheat, Vrihi, that is domesticated type of rice, and Nivara, the wild rice, which was also edible, Masha, Udad dal, Masura, lentil, Mudga, which is moong, and Khalwa, which could be Khesari or some poor quality pulses. Tila and Priyangu Anu Shyamak millets. Bibi Lal has unfortunately missed to note the mention of Vrihi in the Yajurveda. He claims that Vrihi, that is rice, is found only in the Atharva Veda, but this is not correct. I have myself found mention of Vrihi in Yajurveda, and I have given the reference also. People can check it. It is Vrihayah. All the grains have been used in plural in that verse in Yajurveda. So Vrihaya means there may be plenty of varieties of cultivated rices, like today we have plenty of varieties, and therefore a plural has been used. Coming to the next point, Rigvedic description of food grains parallels Mehergarh period 1 archaeology, or I would say period 1 and 2 archaeology. Mehergarh period 1A shows evidence of regular cultivation of domesticated 6-road barley, the earliest recovered in the world, dated 9000 to 7500 Cal BCE. This is the corrected calibration done by me, and Possel did the calibration. He dated 8500 BCE for the same sample, and date obtained after fresh calibration from available uncalibrated dates provided by Janij. Only a few grains of wheat, only a few, have been found from this period of Mehergarh. That indicates that it was not under cultivation, but it was collected from some wild and it was not important. And that's why we do not find mention of wheat in the Rig Veda. We find mention of only barley. Vrihi is not there. Godhum, wheat is not there. Rice, Vrihi is not there in the Rig Veda. So experimentation is in rice cultivation started in India about 6000 BCE in UP. And it went to Harappa about and became a regular cultivation by 4000 BC. This explains the absence of the word for rice from Rig Veda and its presence in the Yajur Veda. Now, these authors, Bates and Petrie, they are from England, and the project was funded by UK India Foundation and Research Initiative. They found that in that area of Indus Valley civilization, about 4000 BCE, rice cultivation had started from the local wild breeds of wild rice. Okay, so this is the list. This is the list of Yajurveda. Now, in this list, we find Priyangu. Priyangu is foxtail millet. It has been mentioned in the Yajurveda, and it has been found in Harappa civilization since 4000 BCE. It came to India from China about 4000 BCE. This has been written by a large number of authors. And incidentally, we do not find foxtail millet mentioned in Rig Veda, we find it in Yajurveda. So it coincides well with this import of this millet from China. And it has been found in Surkotada, Rosdi, Shikarpur, etc. This is Fracheti's map. He showed that during the Bronze Age, while wheat and barley were going to China from India, from China, the millets, some of the millets were coming. And I have made note of in detail in my book. So interested, you just can read that. Another Anu. Anu means very small, tiny, and this millet has been mentioned in the Yajurveda. It is Panicum millesium or proso millet. And this was domesticated in southern Central Asia, Turkmenistan. So absence of this millet from Rig Veda and its presence in Yajurveda tells a lot about the likely dating of the two texts. From Turkmenistan, it came to India during the Bronze Age. I think Anu is also known as Kodo, I think, but what it is, we will have to confirm from different local names. Shamak, Sama or Samai is a black millet. Samai is in Tamil. Panicum frumentaceum. Sama in Bihari and Bengali. It is found only in South Asia. It is native of South Asia, but it was not cultivated during the Rig Veda period, and it became cultivated during the Yajurveda period. It was found in Harappa culture, but it was absent from Mehergarh period. That may be because of the change of climate. The earlier climate of Mehergarh was not suiting it, and the Harappa climate was suitable for its cultivation, so it got people started cultivating it. Now I will discuss a couple of geological evidence. The final geological evidence of Saraswati. Now, a lot of speakers and authors have talked a lot and tried to prove that Saraswati was very wide and very big during the Indus Valley civilization, etc. But that we do not need to do, because our date of Rig Veda is 8000 to 6000 BCE. And in the Rig Veda, the river Saraswati is the mightiest river, and it has been mentioned a large number of times. So I have not given the reference from Rig Veda. But in Yajur Veda, it is generally mentioned as goddess, particularly of the speech. And at one place, the meaning river is implied. And in Atharva Veda, I found that the Saraswati generally means a powerful goddess living in the heaven. it does not mean a river in the Atharvaveda. So probably it was composed after she had dried up completely. So in our construction of the dates, we find that the Yajurveda is contemporaneous with the stage of Saraswati River when it had lost connection with the Himalayan glaciers and was surviving only as a monsoon-fed river, and that Atharvaveda was composed after the Saraswati River had dried up completely. We know that the river had started drying about 3500 BCE, and let us see in depth what authors have said. Geosan studied the geology and tectonics and other things, and he wrote in 2012 that there was some tectonic change due to which Saraswati River lost connection with the glaciers and got connected with some lake in the dune region of the Himalayas. So that is one point. Second point is that Mehergarh was located not on the bank of any river, but quite away from river. Why? Because he felt wild, untamed rivers once slashed through the heart of the Indus plains. They were so unpredictable and dangerous that no city could take root on their banks. This is the reason why we don't get Mehergarh on the bank of either Indus River or Saraswati River. So they destroyed any village which would stand near that river. Now they incised under the soil. Now you have heard the word Purandara. Pura generally means village, a human habitation. Pura, Singapura, Hastinapura. In Iranian language also, Pura means village, like Nishapura. And in Greek also, its derivative polis. Polis means city or inhabited area. So Puri or Pura was a village which was incised by these rivers, and rivers were quite often addressed as Indra. From Indra is derived the words for well, Kuan. In eastern India, Bihar and Bengal, Inda and Inar words, they are derived from Indra but means source of water, like well. So Purandara is these rivers which destroyed the villages. Sometime in the early Holocene, the Satluj and Yamuna broke away from Saraswati. Yamuna joined Ganga and Satluj joined Indus River. And this is the reason why this became very weak. Saraswati River became very weak. One thing many people have tried to prove, Indian scholars have tried to prove, that even as late as 3000 or 4000 BC, River Saraswati was connected with the Himalayas. Such attempts should not be made, but we should go by facts. Rig Veda definitely belongs to a period when River Saraswati had a direct connection with the Himalayan glaciers. And this is explicitly mentioned in Rig Veda 4:17-2. It says, "Heaven trembled at the birth of thine effulgence." At the birth of thine effulgence, that means your source of origin, the glaciers. Earth trembled at the fear of thy displeasure. So there was an earthquake. The steadfast mountains shook in agitation. The mountains also shook due to this earthquake. The waters flowed and desert spots were flooded. Now, mention of flooding of the desert, and it is Saraswati which flowed through or near the Thar desert. So it could not have been any other river. So it is a clear mention that there was an earthquake on the mountain glaciers, and this resulted in a severe flood in the Saraswati River, flooding the Thar desert. So Rig Veda was definitely from a period when glaciers were connected with the river. And this is the conclusion which I have brought. And this is the meaning of the same verse, Thar desert. So next, evidence from animals. So beaver argument is one of the favorite arguments of itself. Beaver is not found in India. However, it has been mentioned in the Yajurveda, but not in the Rig Veda. Witzel claimed that when the Aryans came to India, they remembered the word beaver, babru in Sanskrit, and applied it onto mongoose or neula, which is an Indian animal. This is what he has hypothesized, and everybody else accepted it. However, he had not exhausted the study of archaeology. We get bones of hunted beavers. There were a large number of beavers which were hunted. We get them from Gufkral excavation and Bujhom sites excavation dating back to 1300 Cal BCE to 1800 Cal BCE. After that, beavers become extinct from India because of too much extensive hunting. They were endangered and they became extinct. This animal beaver has been mentioned in Avesta as well as in Yajurveda. So clearly, archaeology supports that beaver actually existed during the Yajurvedic period, and it was not from the memory memory from some Eurasia or Ukraine or Germany that they were remembering this animal. Other animals mentioned in Taittiriya Samhita, that is Black Yajurveda, are tortoise, crocodile, rhinoceros, otter, dolphin, and beaver. And these animals are from wet climate, and they are not found in Rig Veda because Rig Veda, in my study, pertains to a dry climate, a desert-like, a steppe type grassland, where the most favorite animal which could live was lion, but tiger could not live there. Other animals of this type of wetter climate are chameleon, wolf, ichneumon, etc., which are present in Yajurveda but absent from the Rig Veda because the Rig Veda pertain to a drier climate, and they are absent from Mehergarh also. The animals which are absent from Rig Veda are also absent from Mehergarh. This is 1 and 2. This is very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Priyadarshi. This was a very interesting talk, sir. A lot of times people quote what they want to say and they don't necessarily make the right references. So one has to take speakers at their word. Here you've got every single last reference down, which is very impressive. Sir, I have a question which is really a devil's advocate kind of question. You have mentioned various things that are referred to in the later Vedas and not referred to in the Rig Veda. Does that necessarily imply that those particular elements were not present in the real life of that time and region? Or, I mean, do you have an example of a stark absence? Something that is standing out. It's, for example, you said bananas are used in pujas all the time now. And how come they're not mentioned? But we know that the Rig Veda does not refer to, for example, Havan Paddhati.
Ah.
So are we looking in the right space, or are we reading too much into that absence? I'm very sorry. Please don't take this question wrong.
No, the question is correct. Havan things started in Yajur Veda, and they have got detailed this thing mention of the Paddhatis and what sacrificial things to sacrifice. But the Havan altars are also found in Indus Valley Harappa civilization. They have not been found from Mehergarh. So absence of Havan Paddhati in Rig Veda is consistent with the absence of those Havan Kunds, etc. from the Mehergarh period 1 and 2. So one thing can be a coincidence, or 2 or 5 things can be a coincidence, but not 50 or 100 things with a regular pattern. Like they appear in Yajur Veda and simultaneously they appear in Harappa civilization also. So this there is a pattern, which means that it has to be really given some weight. Like lion argument, people used to say earlier that Rig Vedic people had a taboo against tiger and they hated tiger due to some omen or something. Therefore, they haven't mentioned tiger. But actually, tiger did not exist. That is the most logical thing to say, rather than impose them a superstition on them. Those good people, why would they be superstitious and hate the tiger? So, similarly, people have earlier historians have said that they disliked rice and disliked wheat, therefore they have not mentioned them. Why would they dislike and start liking them again? It's such a good food, rice. Why would they hate it? And so these are the basic questions. So absence of these things can be, like I tell you one thing, in medical profession, absence of many things, like if we are discussing some disease, a patient's diagnosis, and one of my colleagues says, well, but the fever is absent. So absence has to be given the weight at certain points. And while making many diagnoses, such things are said that, you say alcoholic liver disease, but any liver damage is absent in ultrasound. Such things have importance. So absence also has to be given some importance. If it is a regular pattern.
A regular pattern, of course, sir. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
So, Dr. Saab, first thing that it was such a good presentation, and it was such a detailed presentation. I'm really such a deep work. Very few works in this direction have been done. So now taking it forward from your lecture, my first question is that as you have told that law doesn't mean iron or loha. Is it really so, or because if we see Mahabharata, direct term law, first time it comes during Bhishma Parva, and directly only once it has been shown that Bhim, in place of Gada, he took Loh Dand to attack, and he kills. So I think at that time it was that iron, it means direct reference to iron only. Isn't it so, sir?
It could have been. See, what happened that people have done, a large number of scholars. Generally, deep studies are done by the Western scholars only. I'm not a racist or anything, but I have found that Indians do not like to do deep research work. They do very superficial and make conclusions. But the Western authors, German particularly and British, They have examined this fact very deeply, and they have presented the evidence with the quotes and references. So I did not re-examine this point, and there is a consensus that Rig Vedic law or ayas, etc., is copper, and the earlier meaning, because you see Lohit, what does Lohit means? Lohit means red. Neel Lohit color is blue-red color. है? It does not mean the color of iron. So it is color of copper. And while when it comes, there is a clear mention of black metal in Chandogya Upanishad also. Krishna ayas, Krishna law words are used. So we have to give some importance to this thing. But regarding Mahabharata, yes, you may be right. Mahabharata in my dating, which my dating through these methods has been used by Saroj Bala also. I wrote a chapter on in her book. So law could have been present at 3000 BC, which is the date of Mahabharata in my dating system method, in my method. And 3000 BC is very much the time when I expect iron to be present in India, Indus Valley region.
Now, sir, my second question is that if we see in the Mahabharata, there is a reference that there is Bhim and Hanuman Samvad is going on. So he is detailing how the evolution of human beings happened, Hanuman. So he mentions that the first communicable disease to strike was leprosy. And that probably you are from that profession. So somewhere I have read that really leprosy was the first communicable disease to hit human beings. But the timing probably it is somewhere around 1800 BC. In India only it was found earliest one. So how could it relate to that?
No, we should not take every verse of every Smriti text. Not every word is absolutely correct. If it is a Shruti, then of course, like Yajurved, Rigved, Atharved, then every word has the truth, the weight of truth in it. But in the Smritis, we have to use our discretion. Mahabharata, and of course, if somebody is a very orthodox believer, I respect their belief. And I respect their feeling that Bhim could have a conversation with Hanumanji. And I am not going to challenge that. But when it comes to taking some scientific fact out of that, I will take that thing only if it is consistent with other findings, archaeological findings. Definitely tuberculosis and this leprosy are very old and maybe 20, 30,000 years old. And there are researches published in scientific journals which say that when man was in Africa, and possibly then only, and many things, lice, juu ya dhil jise kehte hain, that also inhabited man very early, maybe 30,000 years back. So there are many communicable diseases, and in Rig Veda, a large number of communicated diseases. Yakshma has been mentioned in Rig Veda, which is a communicable disease. In Mandal 10, Mandal 10, I think it is 62, I'm 62 or something. Yakshma has been mentioned, and its treatment also has been mentioned. So I do not buy this Mahabharata thing, but I definitely believe the Rig Veda thing of Yakshma. So see, you can see the difference in the level of authenticity of the two books. While Rig Veda mentions Yakshma, it gives its treatment, different plants, and those plants are now being examined in laboratory in Canada and America, and it is found that they are active and effective against tuberculosis. So I will trust the Rig Veda, but when it will come to leprosy and Mahabharata with very poor quality of evidence, I may not be very impressed to quote it in my writings.
We have another question from Raghavarji. He's asking, what is evidence of horse in India? It's mentioned in Rig Veda from the earliest period.
There is a lot of evidence of horse in India. I have written not only article, but in my book also, there are chapters in both of my latest books. I devoted large chapters, and my published article in Puratattva. So during the Rig Vedic period, horse was wild. It wasn't domesticated, because in Rig Veda we find mention of thousands and thousands of horses. But Kazanas has rightly pointed out, I now totally agree with him, that the Rath and chariots mentioned in the Rig Veda, it is mentioned only in context of gods, and they are going in the sky. So they were imaginary, they were not real, they were used by the gods. But there is no mention in Rig Veda that somebody was riding on a horse. Horses were hunted and they were slaughtered in ritual Ashwamedha Yagya, and their food was consumed. It was a very high quality protein food, and this was done, practiced in Europe and Central Asia, everywhere later also. So definitely it mentions thousands of horses in one go. It doesn't mention one or two horses. So this is the point about horse and Rig Veda, and biological scientists also agree that at about early Holocene, horses were there. Horses got destroyed when the forests emerged. Because what happens in a forest? These animals which save their lives by running away. Now in a forest, they cannot run fast. So either Ajgar or a tiger or somebody will kill them and eat them. Wolves, pack of wolves. And this is why they became extinct, because after 5,500, there was a wet phase, not only in India, but in Iran also. If you read Iran archaeology, put in Google, Sabz phase, SABZ, then you will get there also. So these periods were dangerous for these animals who saved their lives by running, and horse became extinct, but survived in mountain areas of India where these predators were not present, like all the mountain horses of India breeds. They are surviving from original Indian horses, and in Indus Valley excavation also. I mean, John Marshall, he has mentioned a horse skull, full detail. In my book, you will find the reference in his report. It is available free now on the archive.org. The Harappa excavation by Rakhal Das Banerjee and this Sir John Marsh. So really, horse was there.
Okay, thank you, sir. I hope that answers Raghavarji's question. He also has a follow-up question. He's asking, you mentioned something about writing in Yajurveda. There was a statement while you were making the presentation. So if it is possible for you to elaborate on the same.
Actually, the linguists found that there is no common word for writing in the Indo-European languages. So they proposed that they separated from each other before writing was invented. Okay, now people examined, these all are published articles, not one or two, their number is in tens, and they were published 100 years back or 150 years back by those people who could remember each and every word of the Vedas. And they found that there is no evidence in Rig Veda that writing was there. But in Yajur Veda, I have cited the verse number. I personally found that there is a clear mention of writing. So in Yajur Veda, definitely writing was there. And it mentions well about writing. Question is there anything in Harappa? Yes, in Harappa we find writing. So there is a match again on this point that writing as a skill, as a technology was present in Yajur Veda and in Harappa civilization. Rakhi Garhi also, some seals have writings. But in Mehergarh, we have got no evidence of any writing on any stone or any slab or any seal. So this corroborates well with the finding of linguists and Rigvedic Sanskritists that writing was not there during the Rig Veda period.